can say definitively that religions are all bullshit.
Welcome to Brainstorm.
We have the explicit tag for a reason.
This is a base level argument to a higher level morality.
I get paid to science?
Two science as much as one can science.
What the hell was my point?
Trigger warning. The Brainstorm podcast will criticize your most cherished beliefs. We attack nonsense in all its forms and discuss difficult subjects. If you peddle pseudoscience, supernatural woo, or religious dogma, then this is not your safe place. This is the home of hardcore skepticism.
Hi, and welcome to the Brainstorm Podcast Skeptic Studio, where we do interviews, major topics, and news related to skepticism and atheism. I'm Corey, and my panel tonight are Angela.
Hello.
Leo.
Hey there.
Renee.
Hello.
Destin.
Hey.
With the always amazing Dave doing sound.
Always amazing.
Always amazing. We're here in Roman Empire Studios in Regina, Saskatchewan, and today is July 7th, 2017. Our guest tonight is David Madison, author of 10 Tough Problems in Christian Thought and Belief. A minister turned atheist shows you why you should ditch the faith. David's book is being featured in John Loftus's series on debunking Christianity. Thanks for joining us, David.
Very glad to be here.
So I guess a good place to start would be a bit about your background and how you came to atheism and writing a book about it.
I grew up on the flat prairie of northern Indiana in the 1940s and 50s. I graduated from high school in 1960. I grew up in a religious home, not a fundamentalist home. My father was a physician, and he'd been a school teacher before that. So while it was a conservative Methodist home, both my parents believed in evolution and would have thought that they would have thought it eccentric not to believe in evolution. And my mother and I read the Bible together, and so that was a very firm introduction to religion for me. And by the time I went away to college, I was thinking about going into the ministry, and that developed. And I ended up going to Boston University School of Theology, which at the time maybe still is one of the premier Methodist seminaries in the country. But I'd always grown up with a fair level of skepticism, questioning, wanting to know. For example, I wanted to know as much as I could about the Bible. Where did it come from? How was it written? How was it put together? So that curiosity kind of in the end proved to be my undoing as far as being a believer was concerned. It was in seminary itself that belief dissipated. By the time I got my PhD in biblical studies, I had become an atheist after 9 years serving in the Methodist ministry. So
that's quite a long time to be educated in your religion to become an atheist.
Well, there were actually things in seminary. Maybe the seminary professors, I'm quite sure they didn't intend it that way, but there were those seminal moments when, for example, when I went to seminary in the late 1960s, early 1970s, there was a Swiss theologian named Karl Barth. Don't know whether that rings any bells with you or not, but he spent 30 years writing a 14-volume theology called Church Dogmatics. Oh, wow. He was German. I mean, he was Swiss, so it was written in German. And one of my theology professors, he was able to poke fun at this a little bit. He said, nobody knows 8,000 pages about God, not even in German. And believe me, even in its translated version, nobody could or would want to read it outside of theology professors and people who are doing doctoral dissertations and that sort of thing. But so true. Nobody knows 8,000 pages about God, but then you pause to ask the question after you start laughing at that, how does anybody know one page about God?
Right.
Where do you get your information? And the more you thought about all the sources, revelation or visions or prayer, scripture, all of those proved to be highly flawed, highly suspicious. And so you just have to end up saying, who knows anything about God? How do you do that?
Yeah, it seems like a good question to me. So
that's what I deal with in the second chapter of my book. But the other seminal moment was one of my professors said, "What's the value of a 40-day resurrection?" Now, it's in the first chapter of the book of Acts that we read the story that after Jesus had been hanging around for 40 days, he ascended into heaven. Well,
right.
That was written in an era where maybe they didn't all believe that the world was flat, but they believed that heaven was not too far above, whether it was a few miles above the clouds or whether it was somewhere between Earth and the moon. But now we can be sure. You really have to be unhinged to believe that Jesus ascended from the earth. Where did he go? Heaven is not there. And so then the whole story of the ascension becomes ridiculous. And so you have to know that Jesus, if you take it at face value, that Jesus rose from the dead, then he had to die again. And he was buried again somewhere. He never left planet Earth. Hence my professor who said, what's the value of a 40-day resurrection? And that, of course, that undercuts probably the most fundamental dogma of the Christian faith.
Yeah.
So, and I'd always been a student of astronomy, and the more you read about the scope of the universe, all the Christian concepts become deeply suspicious, deeply flawed. So that was my journey to atheism. The other great theologian at the time, Paul Tillich, he had also wrote in German as well as in English. He said that God cannot be properly even said to exist because that would limit God. Therefore, God is the ground of all being. Well, what the hell does that mean?
Trying to figure that one out.
I was trying to hold on to Christianity, so the ground of all being sounded pretty good. But I was going into church every Sunday morning, and here were people sitting in the pews who, if I said God was the ground of all being, they would have said, "What?"
Yeah, that's right. What does that mean?
They came to church every Sunday to talk to literally the man upstairs. You could chat with the man upstairs. They wanted the cosmic buddy. They wanted the friend in the sky. Mm-hmm. So I had to make my escape, and I did transition into the business world. But I never lost my fascination with the Bible, not because I was looking for a way back. I didn't lose my faith, as Dan Savage says. He saw through his faith.
Right.
But still, you have a fascination of where did these documents come from, and how in the world can people still take this stuff seriously?
Yeah.
And so my thoughts, I continued to read in theology, even Christian apologetics, but I continued to read in the area. And over the years, my thoughts began to coalesce. And I said, how can I categorize these problems with Christianity? And so I ended up with these 10 buckets, these 10 tough problems.
Okay.
And one of the most common questions I get I have a Facebook page for the book, And one of the most common questions I get is, only 10? And and I say, yeah, there are far more than 10, but I sweep them into these 10 categories. And then it took me 5 years to write the book.
Okay. Wow. So I imagine it was the sort of thing you fit around your day life or your day job.
Yeah, but then I retired 3 years ago, and I was able to accelerate the process of getting down to writing. I had been on an accelerated study program for several years, diagramming the books I needed to read to get ready to write this. And after you've read 25 or 30 books, you finally say, wait a minute, I got to start writing. So I could read forever. But
right.
I sat down and began writing. Yeah.
Did you ever reach a point where the information seemed to be saturated, like you were hitting the same points over and over again, or was it always different?
Well, there was always fresh insights, but you just got to the point of frustration and saying, I want to say what I want to say. I can read tons of stuff. But then it comes to the point where you just want to say, I have a voice, I have something I want to say, and so I just got going on
it. Fair enough.
And I was writing on these 10 tough problems, and one of them, I would share this with various people to get their reaction because I wanted feedback on what I was writing. And people said, this is a very fascinating thing. You're a minister, now you're an atheist. Why don't you tell us your own story? How did that happen?
Right.
And so that became the prologue to the book.
So in your life, have you gotten a lot of pushback while you were writing the book when you were telling people what you were doing?
Yeah, because I was, foolish me maybe, but I was enlisting Christian friends to read the manuscript. And it's amazingly difficult to get Christians to read something that's critical of their faith.
I can attest to that.
Some self-flagellation right there.
There were atheists who were saying only 10, and the Christians were saying, what problems?
Right.
Yes.
What problems? And so, there were some very devout Catholics, for example, I showed this to, and they were very put off by it. And they really didn't want to write anything down. They didn't want to read my chapters with that much care to really think about it and pose questions.
Mm-hmm. Well, the one question that I sometimes have, like I studied religious studies and theology just like in undergrad level, but pretty much, a very similar thing happened to me where I wanted to make sense of everything, that kind of make everything fit, and to the point where it just all crumbles down. But so my question, how come so many people don't see those aspects where the problems with Christianity? So that people get doctorates, do they not question a lot of the things, or do they willfully?
Sum up the question. I'm not hearing it very well.
Oh,
what do you?
Well, why are there so many people that don't question their faith in that way when they're going through their studies, like when they do their doctorate in theology or something like that?
Why don't more people come out of the seminary atheists? Was that basically it?
Yeah. Roughly, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the purpose of seminaries is to manufacture clergy.
Right.
The overwhelming majority of people who go through seminary, at least in my time, was to turn out pastors. And maybe it's changed today, I don't know, but I don't think seminaries hire atheist professors. They don't want to damage the faith. And so they don't encourage people in seminary to really think it through.
Yeah, I suppose,
There are tons of apologists out there who write solutions to the 10 tough problems, and the pastors in training, they lap that stuff up. But in terms of really, really penetrating criticism and following the questions where they lead, That not so much.
So do you think that question that was kind of piqued your mind, where it was like the foundational ground of whatever, do you think that that's something that other people they just breeze past that kind of thing? Or do they...
Sure.
Yeah.
The ground of all being. Hey, that sounds cool.
Right. They don't grab onto it and wonder, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah. I wrote a paper when I was in seminary. I wrote a paper just for my own, just to get my thoughts on paper. And the title of it was On the Improbability of God. Now, I'm in seminary. Okay.
Right.
And I
Not a
showed
very
this,
popular paper.
well, I had the nerve to show it only to one of my classmates. And he was not pleased. And he accused me of scientism. He said, I believe in a God who inhabits eternity. Well, that sounds great.
But what does it mean?
What does it mean? Even today, you hear Christian apologists talking about the God who is outside space and time.
So it doesn't exist. That's exactly what he is.
That's what that means.
It sounds good. I mean, as I said earlier, I read a lot of Christian apologetics and Christian theologians, and the margins of these books are filled with my notes, such as, how do they learn to talk like this? How does he know this stuff?
Yeah.
Philosophy of religion. That's, yeah.
John Loftus has a book on that.
Yeah.
Unapologetic. That's a very good book because, but the apologists have to come up with something that's, and believe me, what the apologists come up with, most Christian lay people could not understand and won't read anyway. Apologists write for other theologians. They write for pastors who have some education in biblical studies and some education in philosophy and in theology.
Yeah. So when you were witnessing all this while you were getting your education, you really didn't encounter other people suffering like cognitive dissonance or anything like that? That was, wow.
Not so much. As I say, the people went to seminary to become ministers. And even if, and one of the great heroic things you can do as a minister is overcome those doubts.
I suppose, yeah, even people who did have the odd doubt wouldn't really acknowledge it, or they would just try and pray themselves through it. Or
It's just a test of faith.
Well, see, I understand that because in car sales, I'm a car salesman. Overcoming objections, that's the biggest part of my job. So I'm basically
you're like a religious apologetic.
Yeah, there you go. Just have to overcome those objections.
Mazda's your God.
In any sales job, and being a pastor is a sales
job. For sure it is.
Because you've got to sell the invisible and the unknowable.
For 10% of people's income. Forever.
But you've got to, and the big dodge, the big hiding place is what in my book I call the mystery cave. If somebody asks a question that's beyond you struggle with, oh, that's a mystery. That's a divine mystery.
God's will.
And
mysterious ways.
Yeah.
Jiggly keys.
But in the sciences, if a scientist comes up with something that is a mystery, that drives the scientist forward to try to penetrate the mystery.
Right.
Let's do some tests. Let's gather some data. And this is one thing I keep saying to people, and whether it penetrates, I don't know. But I keep saying there are no data about God. Zero.
Yeah, that's right.
Here, zip. Zero. What you think of as data, my own personal feelings, I feel God in my life, that's not data.
No, that's right. That's barely anecdotal.
But that's so compelling for some people. Like it's so intensely personal a feeling, and people, it's so hard for them to get past that. I recently had a conversation with my father about these things because I'm getting a little rammier in my old age, and he said that it's not his job to question. It's not his job to question. So he just turns that part of his brain off. He feels as though his job is just to believe and just to stay the course. Exactly. Exactly. Just keep going and don't ask those tough questions.
That's the frame of mind that accounts for the fact that religion and the church thrives.
Yeah.
As an aside, a couple of years ago when the Pope was visiting New York, I made a point of going to Europe. The Pope was in New York because I didn't want to deal with all the craziness. Mm-hmm. And one of my friends on Facebook put on a picture of herself all dressed up in her finery to go hear the Mass that Francis was going to do, I think Madison Square Garden or Yankee Stadium, I can't remember. And I wrote to her in a private message. I didn't want to put it on her Facebook feed. I said, have you read anything about this man? I mean, do you really know that he deserves to be hero worshipped like you are? It seems to me like they got rid of the last pope because he was a disaster in terms of public relations.
Right.
And they hired Francis for his PR skills. And here's a pope that smiles a lot and he has some selfies taken. But what has he actually done about the humongous scandal of priests molesting children? What has he actually done?
Yeah.
What have you read about Francis that makes him so worthy of your devotion? I see, it's the Catholic mentality. Well, it's not just the Catholic mentality, but when a new pope is elected, the people in the Vatican Square are all totally fawning and just swooning with delight. I mean, you don't know anything about this new pope. How does he deserve such fervent devotion right off the bat?
Yeah.
But she wouldn't hear of it.
They get the devotion because he's wearing the stupid hat.
You need a hat.
It's got shiny stuff on it.
Yeah. That's why they don't take us seriously. It's because we don't have the right hats.
Yeah, we don't have the proper hat.
Let's take a page out of their book.
Canadians come close, like Mountie hats.
Yeah,
pretty close.
But we don't worship the Mounties.
No, that's true.
No.
They deserve it.
And I particularly pointed out to her that Francis's stand on gays and lesbians, I mean, you can say on a plane, who am I to judge? Give me a break. You're the Pope. We expect you to judge.
That's your job.
But then when it comes down to his policies, he actively intervened in one of the Eastern European countries to condemn the vote. They were going to vote on same-sex marriage. Mm-hmm. And the thing I cannot understand is the Catholic Church is such a misogynistic organization. How can any woman be a Catholic? I don't get it.
I know a lot of women that are devoutly Catholic.
A lot of women are Republican. I saw that.
So that was off topic. What were we talking about?
Welcome to the Brainstorm Podcast.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that people seem to do that are against their own interests, one might say.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but your father was talking about you don't question.
Yes.
That's the formula for success.
Right? Yeah.
You don't question. We're the authorities.
That's right.
We know about this stuff. So take our word for it.
How do you innovate? How do you change? How do you excel? How do you,
Well, among other things, I wrote a book. And people come to me with this. They do say people who are religious were not reasoned into it to begin with, so they can't be reasoned out of it.
Yeah,
I was reasoned out of my faith, though.
Yeah, but what I have to, I think it was Greta Christina who at an atheist conference, she asked for a show of hands. Mm-hmm. How many people here used to be church-going Christians? And there were a lot of people who raised their hands.
Yeah.
Because they moved from point A to point B or point A to point Z. They left religion, and I'm quite sure that a lot of them were reasoned out of it.
Yeah.
A lot of people read Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris, and that moved them. And on my website, by the way, my book got to be so long, my publisher did not want to include a bibliography. I had a massive bibliography, which would have added 14 or 15 pages.
Oh, jeez.
And so it was a blessing in disguise because I now park that bibliography on the book's website.
Right.
I call it the Cure for Christianity Library.
Nice. Nice.
That's awesome.
Word bibliography is a little bit too academic and stale.
Right, yeah.
So the Cure for Christianity Library. And currently, since it's not published in the book, I can update that Cure for Christianity Library. And I used to call it the atheist publishing boom. But when you know how many books are published by the Christian devotional industry,
it's still a minuscule number comparatively.
I called it the atheist publishing surge, and 200 plus books on there, most of them since the year 2000.
Yeah. So
I suspect a lot of people have indeed read their way out of the faith. And when I was approaching literary agents about my book, one of the most common responses I got was, there are already so many books on that shelf. And I said, okay, but I have my own voice. I have my own things to say about this. So I plodded ahead. Finally found a publisher, and that's where we are today. But because so many very smart people have explained in great detail how and why Christianity has been falsified, I think we are making progress.
I think that's fair to say. So your book is, say, 10 tough problems with Christian thought and belief. So what are a couple examples of that? Without giving too much away of the book.
Well, I do.
Is there an audiobook version?
Huh? No.
Sorry,
man. There's a Kindle. But I've said I have not ranked them in order of priority, although I do start out with the problem of evil, the problem of suffering. Because I think that, above all, if anything gives Christian pause, they stop to think about, it would be that.
Right.
Okay. And the example I give at the beginning of that chapter is my Catholic friend, the same one who was oohing and ahhing over Pope Francis. 10 days after the Newtown, Connecticut massacre, where 26-year-olds were killed in their classroom. That was on the 24th of December, and Christmas Eve being 10 days later, she referenced this horrendous event by saying, God must have wanted more angels. And that's an example of how Christians will try anything to get out of blaming God. But H.L. Mencken said that the Christian faith falls apart on the problem of suffering and evil. And Christians just ignore it. They make excuses for it. But a lot of people, I think it bothers so many people so much. I think it was pointed out not long ago that the tsunami in Southeast Asia, what year was that? 2001 or 2, 3 or 4, I don't know.
Yeah.
But 100,000 babies and children were drowned and crushed to death. Where's your benevolent God?
Yeah.
The suffering involved here. And Darrell Ray said, with 92 million people killed during the Second World War, that surely convinced a lot of people that their prayers were not answered. Their prayers were to nothing.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe, I've not studied this, I don't have the data, but I firmly believe that Europe is so overwhelmingly secular today because of 50 million people killed in Europe during the Second World War. That's a horrendous amount of suffering and evil. Your God is good theology takes a severe beating when you go through something like that.
Right, eh?
And evil is one.
Mm-hmm.
But the second problem is the problem of knowing God. How do you do that? There's nothing that is verifiable. There's nothing that's really reliable. One of my favorite chapters, it happens to be the 9th chapter, in which I point out that Jesus was not such a good guy after all. What would Jesus do? Well, you base what Jesus would do on what your ideal image of Jesus is.
Right, yeah.
A lot of scholars have pointed out, wait a minute, there's a lot. The flaws in Jesus are right there in full view in the New Testament. And Hector Avalos wrote the book, The Bad Jesus. Luke chapter 14, verse 26, you've got to hate your mother and father in order to be one of my followers.
Yeah.
And the word hate, Christian apologists try to dilute that and try to finesse it and try to spin it. But Avalos points out in a 40-page chapter in his book, you can't do that. The word hate is there. And there are other things in the teachings of Jesus that are a real turnoff. Some of his teachings are really bad. His teaching on divorce, for example, is a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And is carried out in the Catholic Church severe interpretation of Jesus. It really has been a disaster. So there's a full chapter on why Jesus is not such a good guy.
He was a bad dude.
Yeah, I bet that doesn't get as much, even a lot of the philosophic kind of arguments back and forth about apologetics. Some people will concede a lot of that stuff, or they'll just ignore it, but it's probably pretty, I don't know, they probably really don't like it when you tell them that Jesus wasn't a good guy.
Well, yeah, and I can be pretty blunt and belligerent sometimes. I was walking through Times Square, 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night after the theater. This was ages ago. And there was a guy there holding a sign, Jesus saves.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I was in one of my moods. And I went up to him and I said, what about Luke 14:26? And I'm not sure he knew what it was. And I said, you've got to hate your mother and your father, your brothers and your sisters, your whole family, to follow me. I just looked at him, and then I said, Jesus was an asshole.
Yeah.
And I walked away.
He didn't respond to that?
I did. I just walked away.
You didn't give him a chance.
But, these are folks whose brains are so soaked in the Christian dogma.
Yeah.
There's some.
And they pick and choose because in the Bible it tells you that you're not supposed to proselytize either, right? So.
Well, cherry picking is a time-honored Christian tradition. You pick what you want to pick, and what's unattractive is finessed. Now, one of my other chapters is is chapter 6, in which I deal with the fact that the Gospels indeed are not reliable, which means Jesus may or may not have said that. We don't know. We have no way of knowing. The important thing to remember is that the people who wrote the Gospels, Matthew and Luke in this case, they didn't mind passing on that saying. As far as they were concerned, this was the Jesus speaking in character, the Jesus they were trying to promote. Because Matthew and Luke were trying to promote the Christian cult. They didn't want wishy-washy followers who were going to be distracted by family members who disagreed, like your father.
Yeah, that's right.
They didn't want people who wouldn't be zealously devoted to the Christ cult. But I go into great detail in that 6th chapter about why the Gospels fail as history. There are no sources cited. Where did they get this information? They were eyewitnesses. How do you know that? There's no contemporary documentation, whatever, to back up anything that is said about the life and teachings of Jesus.
Yeah.
I love how he was a teacher, but there is no book of Jesus.
Yeah, he didn't write anything. Richard Carrier, in his book on the historicity of Jesus, Why We Have Reason to Doubt, he does a long analysis of the Sermon on the Mount.
Right.
And he points out this is a literary document.
Mm-hmm.
It was created by an author. It was not something that was spoken. And when you stop to think about it, how would it have been preserved? He was talking to a massive illiterate audience. 95% of people in Palestine at the time did not know how to read or write.
Yeah.
Nobody carried around pads of paper and pencils.
That would be just hilarious to see, though.
Yeah.
Ordinary people would not have been able, even if they wanted to write these things down. And you want us to believe that they went right home after hearing Jesus and found shards of pottery to write down what he said? No.
It does seem a bit far-fetched.
It was oral tradition. These sayings of Jesus were handed down really reliably for 40 or 50 years before they were written down. Bart Ehrman points out in one of his books, it's like the game of telephone. You have 25 people in the room, you start passing around the message. By the time it's repeated 25 times, it's changed too much.
Right.
Yeah.
But then again, one of the responses from the devout Christians would be that they're inspired by God, so pretty much God corrected them when they did write it down at some point in the future. God made sure that they wrote down what Jesus actually said, kind of like the divine inspiration. So that's normally the response that I get if I bring that up.
God, the divine editor.
Just ask them if they know what spatial pleading is.
My question about that, about the writing of the Bible, and this is a little bit of a different question. So it's taking some big leaps of assumption that God is all-knowing, and God had a hand directly in directing the hand of the people that wrote the books. Why wasn't it just originally written in English?
God could have known English would come along in a few centuries.
Sure.
But, you get into real problems when you say God was able to manipulate the mind of the author to write down on the page what God wanted written down on the page. God is omnipotent, and God can do that. Well, if that's true, why didn't God change the mind of the shooter at the Newtown school? Why didn't God change the mind of Adolf Hitler?
Why didn't God just create the Bible and have it and hand it out to people?
But I find that there's a lot of circular arguments going on. So then you get back to because he needed more angels. It was God's will that Hitler should destroy Europe. And you just kind of go into, but that was God's will. We don't understand everything. He's all knowing. Kind of people just reach back to that God's plans are higher than ours.
And my question to someone who poses that, would you like to have spin doctor duty at Dachau. You go in and tell those people, don't worry about your suffering. It's all part of God's bigger plan. Just be happy about it.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
It just seems like there's that complex in Christianity and sometimes in other organized religions where it's just pain and suffering is inevitable and we don't deserve to be happy. We're just shit and terrible and flawed and not good enough.
Yeah, that's the broken world or whatever.
Or it's either that or the exact opposite, where it's all ego driven.
There's that too, like with
it's ridiculously ego driven. If you're praying for change, and you want the most powerful being that's ever existed to take special interest in you directly and change what you want.
And
nothing more egotistical than that.
And have your football team win.
Yeah. I deal with that in the 4th chapter book, the absurdity of Western monotheism, because in order to exonerate God, God is punishing you if you're suffering,
right?
But there's so many problems with God is punishing. I mean, there was an Islamic cleric who said the tsunami happened in Southeast Asia because tourists were wearing bikinis on the beaches of Thailand. So God gets even.
Yeah.
I mean, we have that sort of nonsense coming from Pat Robertson.
Yes.
That's his favorite kind of nonsense.
But I sometimes wonder, like, why wouldn't God have created something that was already dressed the way He wants it dressed, so that you don't have to,
Why don't we have pant plants or shirt plants?
Oh, we should already come with our ridiculous hats in place, the ones we're supposed to wear. Kind of.
Well, we do. They just get cut off.
Jeez.
Explicit tag for a reason.
The people who want to exonerate God and who want to defend Christianity, they can come. Well, I'm hearing that you have the same experience. They can come up with so many excuses, so many ways around these, and they eventually fall back. It's part of God's plan we don't know about. It's part of the mystery. Got to do better than that. And a lot of people sense that isn't good enough, and that's why. I think that's why Christianity is slipping. I mean, I say that yes, Christianity is slipping, but in 2001, I think it was, Christianity Today published a study that showed by the year 2025, there will be 1 billion, that's with a B, 1 billion Pentecostals in the world.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. That's mostly below the equator.
Right.
Because a lot of people are deserting Catholicism in South America. The Pentecostals are growing.
There are certain places and sects of Christianity that are actually on the rise rather than the decline, right?
Well, Africa is a Christianity factory.
Yeah.
You have to worship God. We'll give you food, and you can't use any protection.
Also, condoms are bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're poor, but give us all your money anyway. On the subject of God's mysterious plan, getting that excuse, there's been so many times that just in the back of my head, I just want to punch them in the face right at that point and be like, well, must be God's plan. Let me do it. Obviously, that's not a good way to do things, but it's just in the back of my mind.
You could also just like throw your glass of water in
or
their
wet
face
willy or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That's Any other tough problems?
One of the fifth problem is which monotheism?
Yeah, which one?
Which one? There's the Jewish brand. There's the Christian brand. There's the Islamic brand. There's the Mormon brand.
Yeah,
that's the legit one.
Yeah, but they're kooky.
That's the legitimate one.
these people, all these brands, they believe in a deity.
Yeah.
Well, and essentially the same one, right? It's just
That's
different.
what they say.
Or that Western New Haven, whatever, Pentecostal.
Oh yeah.
But
Pre 1786 or post 1786?
someone put on a meme that showed the dollar bill, "In Allah we trust." How well would that go over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We worship the same God as the Muslims. Well, I don't think so. I don't see you down on your prayer rug 5 times a day.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense when people, examine that carefully.
Mm-hmm.
The Jews do not accept Jesus as the Son of God. Now, there's some.
Yeah.
The theology is off drastically here. It cannot be the same God.
Yeah. Somewhere along the line, it definitely veers off, right?
And in Christianity itself, I covered this. There are 33,000 different brands of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
Because nobody can agree.
And every time they talk to each other, there's another one pops up.
Yeah.
We're having an interfaith meeting, and now we have 4 new religions.
I'm going to start my own church.
And we know the history of the Protestant Catholic.
Yeah, that's right.
And that is marked by wars and persecutions and executions and burning at the stake.
And potatoes.
Potatoes.
You're a potato.
So that's a huge problem in itself. Just the fact that theists cannot agree.
I remember going to church and getting a pamphlet which had a nicely laid out chart of all the different religions, how they were the same and how they were different, and how my religion, the Christian and Missionary Alliance, was the correct way to believe. And it wasn't until 10 years later that I read a book that basically laid it out for me and helped me think critically about, okay, well, who's saying that ours is right, that the Christian and Missionary Alliance is the correct form of Christianity and everyone else is bunk.
It's like my ex-wife, her cousin became very religious in about late high school, and she carried her Bible around, and the conversation would often come up, well, but that's not what this Bible says. And it's always, well, but they have the wrong Bible.
Yes. Yes.
I have the right Bible.
One of the problems I discuss there's a chapter on why the Bible fails as revelation. And one of the points I make in there is there's no such thing as the original Bible.
Of course not.
It doesn't exist. The oldest manuscripts we have are centuries afterward. And I call it, we have the processed Word of God. You pick up a Bible, and everything you see on the page, the punctuation, the word division, the translation into English, all of those came later and are the product of decisions made by other people. So,
I mean, there's how many Gospels were thrown out. I mean, the Bible's a book written by committee.
Who's Bill? Fuck Bill.
Yeah, Gospel of Bill gone.
Exactly. I mean, at some point, the church had to decide which of the books that belong in the canon and which don't, and even the Protestants, Catholics can't agree on that.
Yeah.
And if you want, Mark wrote his gospel. Matthew copied 90% of it and changed a lot of it.
Yeah.
I remember growing up that I grew up in a kind of evangelical home, but for some reason I had a Catholic Bible that has the apocryphas in the middle there.
Yep.
And my parents told me, yes, see, the first part, which is the Old Testament, that's the Word of God, and then this middle part isn't, and then the last part is. And it didn't dawn on me how you present it to me in one book, but the middle part is not actually God's word. Those are
just ignore the middle.
Yeah, those are just stories. And then when I read them, but they all sound pretty much the same. they don't sound that different from the rest of it, but they would explicitly tell me that, yeah, this little part in the middle is not God's word.
I write for the Debunking Christianity blog. After my book was published, John Loftus invited me to be one of the contributing writers. And in my post today, I said, wouldn't it be nice if we could get all Christians to adopt a Bible reading regimen?
Right.
We would have to read each chapter of the Bible very carefully, and then there are 3 boxes for you to check for each chapter. Yes, I do believe that this is the Word of God. Mm-hmm. Yes, I do believe this chapter will help me lead my life. Will be a source of guidance for my life. And then the third point, yes, I believe that this is the way the world works. And the Christians would be given assurances that this survey would be anonymous, which would encourage anonymity. And my prediction is, at the end of this experience, very few chapters of the Bible would be checked off.
Yeah, as the Word of God.
There's a reason that Mark Twain said the best cure for Christianity is reading the Bible.
It's true.
And the scholar Hector Avalos has said 99% of the Bible would not be missed. So that's
Quite
part
a
of the
bit. Doesn't leave much left.
Suddenly the Bible became a pamphlet.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
But if you just took the Sermon on the Mount and took out the word Jesus, people would catch on with the Beatitudes, blessed are the this and that. Mm-hmm. But then you look at some of the things that Jesus supposedly said, do not lay up treasures for yourself on earth. Well, anybody who has a pension plan would say, that can't be right. You have a savings account? Okay. Do not give any thought for what you wear. Do not give any thought to where your next meal is going to be coming from, because God feeds the birds of the air. Most people would say, what is this, some sort of hippie freak?
Yeah, that's right.
Worry about where our next meal is coming from. God doesn't, he may feed the birds, but he doesn't feed me. But there's a lot of this idealistic silliness in the Sermon on the Mount.
That's interesting. I haven't.
Yeah, that's right. It actually almost directly contradicts like some of the stuff that the Mormon church teaches, right? Because they teach that you have to have X number of dollars in savings, and you have to have such and such set aside for future use and stuff like that.
You mean there are contradictions in the Bible?
Maybe.
Wait,
Go figure, eh?
we're just here.
Mind blown.
Yeah, that's right.
Have you read the historical David by chance?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's on my list of books to read. It was written by. Just a sec here. I have it right here.
I'm suspicious.
By Joel Baden wrote it. It's about he did a bunch of research on who King David actually was and all the inconsistencies in the book of David with what they've been able to discern historically of King David, and how he was actually a ruthless, tyrannical ruler that just murdered his way and lied, cheated, and stole to get all his power.
I think that's a historical novel, because we have the same problem with the Old Testament as we do with the New.
Yeah.
There's no contemporary documentation.
But it's just as legitimate as the book in the Bible, right? So
Maybe.
it's all fiction.
Well, and I tell that to people. What you're dealing with here is these are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are supreme storytellers.
Yeah.
And unless you can, and they don't tell us what their sources were. Unless we know what their sources were, unless we know the example, I wrote an article for the blog, the Debunking Christianity blog earlier in the week. And I said, if an historian wants to write a correct account of Lincoln's day at Gettysburg in November of 1963, what does that historian have to do to write that account? She has to find the letters and the diaries of the people who were actually there. She has to research the newspaper accounts that were written within days of the Gettysburg Address.
Right.
She would have to dig through the White House archives to find the Lincoln papers. What did he write? What did Lincoln himself write about what happened that day? That's how you write history. You have to have that sort of contemporary documentation. If you don't have that, and we don't have any of that for Jesus, none, squat, zero, zip. So we have no proof that they weren't just making things up. Somebody said to me, what proof do you have that they were making things up? Well, the burden of proof is on you to provide the documentation to show that these are accurate accounts. Otherwise, they are, I call them religious fantasy literature. They're novels. You compare the book of Mark and the book of John. They can't be the same person because they are so different. There are long stretches of Jesus monologues in John that are clearly literary creations. If they were based on eyewitness accounts, how come Mark didn't hear of them? Mark, John, and Luke, they don't have these long monologues that are in the Gospel of John.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess you're often, the more you think about this stuff, the more you talk about it, you're always left with that wondering, like, well, how can people still believe this stuff? Like, it's just...
I read so little of the Bible when I was a kid. I participated in Bible quizzing. We memorized a book of the Bible every year for Bible quizzing, and then you would be, but you're not.
Book?
Yep, we did. Yeah, Romans one year and
Oh
First and Second Corinthians. Yeah, it was pretty hardcore.
Oh man, numbers! I would just shoot myself.
It was only the New Testament.
Okay, yeah.
There were no Old Testament books that were memorized, which is interesting. It's kind of telling, but you just it's amazing how that cognitive dissonance plays a role in those situations. Yeah, you're memorizing the Bible, but you're not thinking critically about it. You're not taught to question things. I mean,
if you're lucky, the cognitive dissonance will eventually set in.
Eventually, and luckily it did when I was about 17 for me. But while I was in it, while I was participating in that religion, I was thinking of completely different things.
No, like you said it's your dad said it's not his job to question.
Yeah.
And cognitive dissonance is just ignored. It's just walked away from. Mm-hmm. Or people just accept everything that's written in the Bible at face value. But these are the same people that won't believe video footage on fucking CNN.
Well, they believe crisis actors exist.
Yeah, a crying late 20s woman with brown hair. Well, there wouldn't be one of those everywhere in America with a cell phone.
There's no white girls in America.
that look the same, because right now every female that follows makeup trends, they all look the exact fucking same.
Yeah. I got my parents and my in-laws the book Why I Stayed, Why I Left by Tony and Bart Campola. I bought 2 copies. And my dad is a voracious reader, and he actually read the book cover to cover. And he encouraged me to read it because I read some of it, and it's basically Tony's perspective and Bart's perspective, like staying and leaving the church. And then my dad gave me a book to read because he wants. I mean, I found myself when I started. Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted you.
Was it by Lee Strobel?
No, the one he gave me was called Blue Like Jazz.
Oh.
I can't remember offhand who the author is, but just basically someone who reasoned themselves, not necessarily reasoned, that's probably the wrong word, but kind of pondered themselves into religion and started pondering. It was weird, and I read some of it, and it was kind of, I don't know, it seemed silly to me when I started to read it. But even when I was reading Why I Stayed, Why I Left, I found myself gravitating towards Bart's words more than Tony's words. I found myself, holding on to those words more so than Tony, because Tony's he's still a Christian and Bart is not. Bart is an extremely well-known humanist chaplain in California, and I found myself listening to him and paying more attention to what he was saying than anything else. And I mean, so I even do that as a quote unquote skeptic. So, I mean, it's very compelling, that cognitive dissonance. It goes both ways.
Give your dad my book.
I think I will.
Can I point out the way for people to get my book?
Oh, yes, of course. Absolutely.
Yes.
We'll wrap up the interview here right away and get you to plug all the places where people can find all the stuff.
We'll also have it on our Facebook feed and our website.
The Amazon, my name is easy enough, David Madison. And if you just type that into the Amazon search, 10 spelled out, tough problems, it pops right up.
And do you have a Facebook page or Twitter feed or website?
Website for the book is www.either or 10 spelled out, 10toughproblems.com. And by the way, there, the Cure for Christianity library is there as well.
Perfect.
So it's a great resource.
Oh, you were just breathing?
I was thinking of a question, but it disappeared.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
I thought and it stopped.
Oh, yeah, the question I had. So you have the 10 main problems where everything else falls under, but have you annotated or counted the number of problems you've actually come across?
No.
The number is too big.
But I sympathize with the feeling of how can people, I mean, this is what motivated me to write this book. How can people still take this stuff seriously? These are major problems. These are not problems I invented.
Right.
Christian apologists and theologians have been struggling with these problems for centuries. Yeah. Maybe not problem number 6 about the Gospels are not history. That's a more recent, the last 100, 150 years, scholars have been wrestling with that problem. But I actually had one fellow came onto my Facebook page and said, "What problems?" And I wrote back, "You're not ready for this discussion if you don't know what the problems are.
Yeah,
you just swallowed everything. You're not a thinker."
Well, the fact is that theologians have been and apologists have been addressing the problems for a very long time because they recognize them first, and they've been trying to make up excuses for why they're there. So.
And secular thinkers, secular philosophers have come back and said, your excuses are bullshit. They don't add up. They don't wash. They're not convincing.
Yeah, that's right.
Big problem there is the Vatican has a lot of resources.
Oh, yeah.
They have a ridiculous amount of wealth and power in circles, and atheism has none.
I found the way that people better change other people's minds, though, is not to say you're wrong and to point at people and say
I'm doing
what you
it wrong.
believe is wrong because I'm much more likely to take a pause and think if someone asks me a question. If somebody is talking to me and respects me and doesn't come right out and say that I'm wrong, but says, well, have you ever pondered this? Have you ever considered this? What about this? I think those books, I think your book is really good because it lays it out. And for me, that's helpful because I can think of it in those terms. But when I was leaving Christianity, it was never the people that said, you're wrong, you're full of shit, you're stupid for believing in God. It was the people that gently respected me as a human being and just were a good example or suggested that, maybe you should look into this a little bit more.
You have to think your way out. You can't have other people think your way out for you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's correct in so many circumstances. The Socratic method, getting people to think about it, asking the pointed, provoking questions. Yeah. Think about this. I want you to think about that. But in other cases, like my Times Square encounter, sometimes bluntness, ridicule, and there's a lot of ridicule in my book. Mm-hmm. But sometimes that can also make people sit up and take notice.
Yeah, that's true.
Perfect. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks very much for joining us.
Well, we've gone over the hour.
Yes, we have slightly gone over the hour.
You're fun to talk to.
No, that's all right. That's perfect.
I hope you don't charge us extra for going all out.
My bill is not in the mail.
All right.
Perfect.
I look forward to getting the link.
Yes.
And as soon as I have that, I'll start spreading that around.
Awesome.
Brilliant.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Have a good night.
Thanks, David.
Click that button, somebody. Or he clicked the button. All right, let's do a quick ad break, and then we'll come back.
If you like what we're doing and want to help us keep the lights on, go become a patron at patreon.com/Brainstorm Podcast. You can hear the bonus half hour that we record every episode and get a shout out when you support the show. Become a patron for just $1 an episode at patreon.com/Brainstorm Podcast. Or you can support the show by ordering a t-shirt, mug, or other gear from our store at caffeepress.ca/Brainstorm Podcast Gear. If you can't afford to become a patron or buy gear, then why not give us a rating or write a review on iTunes or Stitcher? Every rating makes it easier for people to find us. Thanks for your support.
We are given one life, full of billions of small and large decisions. To be somebody, to change, to be kind, to give hope, to become a better person, and to leave a lasting impact on this planet. It is a decision to be made every single day while your heart is still beating. We've made our decision. Absence of Clothing, atheist and science-based apparel and merchandise, donating 50% of our profits to charity. Look good and feel good, without God. Check us out at absenceofclothing.com and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest for discount codes and other sweet swag.
Use the code BRAINSTORM at absenceofclothing.com and get 10% off.
Have y'all ever wondered what it's like to be a redneck with empathy? Have you never heard of a Southerner who isn't a blathering bigot? Well, have I got the show for you. It's the Podunk Polymath Podcast, hosted by myself, Chris, and it's the sentiments of a secular, sarcastic, screwed-up Southern SJW and skeptic. You can find me and the show on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or your favorite podcatcher. Y'all stop on by and take it easy now, okay?
And we're back.
Hi.
Back again.
Somebody left the door open.
Tell a friend.
So before we
Stretch. Closed door.
Oh,
you suck.
Too late.
There we go.
All right. So before we get too far into another talk, how was everybody's week? or 2 weeks. I guess it's between recordings.
I just went on a trip to the coast.
How was that?
It was really busy, but ultimately good. I saw jellyfish, and I got to go on a boat.
Did it sting you?
No, it was far enough away.
So nobody had to pee on you?
No.
Fucking boat.
I saw lots of jellyfish, actually.
Sorry.
At first, I didn't know what they were, but you look down where the foamy bits of the water is going by, and then I was seeing these translucent circles. I kept seeing them, and I was like, those are fucking jellyfish, and I was really excited about that. But other than that, the trip was good. It was fun. Driving, mountains.
Nice.
It's cool.
How was Renee's week?
All right, it's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Break. 2 week break.
I guess the most. I went to a wedding, which is weddings are weddings.
Another one?
wedding. Yeah, you were in Weyburn, right?
Yeah.
You're a trooper. I don't know.
I don't know why you keep going to these things.
I don't know. I think, you know what? If there is a hell, it's populated by wedding DJs.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, all of you damned to hell forever. That or the Macarena.
So you're saying I have a job?
Yes, that's right.
Dave has a job in hell.
I would like to think hell is more fun than that, but
No. It's supposed to be about punishment. So it's a fucking wedding dance for all eternity.
Ugh.
I did that, and I went to a Screama or Cali seminar.
Sweet.
Which was that? Was the stick fighting?
That's the Filipino stick fighting.
I saw your certificate.
Yeah, it also covered some knife fighting stuff too.
Very cool.
Bringing you with me through all of the dark alleys.
I'm not saying I'm any good at it. Like
you're probably better than I am.
Yeah, the Screamo was a bit of a learning curve, and I don't think I learned it.
No, that's all right.
So if I ever go to Home Depot, go to the doweling section, and that's when shit'll get serious.
Okay.
The doweling section. Nice.
Well, we don't have a lot of sugar cane around here, so
that's right. All right, Leo. How about you?
I can't think of anything. I don't think anything exciting happened.
Not one single thing happened.
You got through the last 2 weeks.
You didn't learn how to beat people up with sticks?
My brother came to town. That was nice.
That's cool.
For the long weekend.
Visits.
So, yeah, other than that, just getting a tan.
Did you make a fresh batch of crystal meth?
Yep.
Good.
It's milk stout meth.
Milk stout meth?
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Are you brewing beer?
All the time, yes.
Always brewing.
Never ends.
Well, that's right. You brought some and I didn't get any that time. I didn't come to the
you weren't
podcast.
And Corey just didn't like it.
Actually, that was pretty good, wasn't it? I seem to recall that one being pretty good.
When is your milk stout ready?
Probably in a week and a half or so.
Just in time for the next podcast.
We should drink it a week early before it's ready. Get real Saskatchewan.
That's standard Saskatchewan prairies.
Is beer ready? Nope. Perfect.
Uncarbonated.
Yeah, that's right.
How's the car business?
No, it's same old.
Yeah.
Old. I was just thinking, I've had this stuck in my head since you said you were on a boat, so.
Now, don't do that.
I'm doing it.
I thought about that song.
I love that song. Went fishing a couple times.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
No, that's cool.
For me, it's been a 2-month break from you guys, right? So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so you've been gone for a long time. You must have had like a whole life since we saw you last.
No.
Just
went fishing.
Of course not.
Work and fished.
Yeah.
My dryer blew up. Well, it didn't blow up. It stopped working. I took it apart. I can't figure out what's wrong with it. I put it back together. Right. Still not working.
That's problematic.
Yes.
Unless you like wet clothes.
Nope.
It's pretty hot out.
Yeah.
Clothes dry quickly outside in the sun.
Yes. They also sun
Thanks,
fade.
Mother Nature.
They do sun fade. That's true.
Towels get kind of scratchy.
Yeah? I don't remember the last time I hung up a towel.
I'm almost hardcore with
Just
that.
drop it on the floor, kick it in the corner.
Yeah, well, it goes in the dryer, right?
It goes in the basket and it magically washes and folds itself.
No, I do.
Oh, that was your last relationship.
I do laundry.
If you want to
Always done my
exfoliate
own.
and dry off at the same time, dry your towels outside.
I had never noticed that, but now that you mention it, I do remember for a while I was drying my clothes outside. And I do remember having like shitty towels. Like they always felt like
sucked.
this. Like this does not feel
Is this
like
what
cotton.
we've come to? Is this
Yeah.
what our show's come to?
Yeah.
We're just chatting.
We're just
Okay.
talking.
Which is
your
the best way to
dryer's
dry your
Scratchy
towels?
crapped out.
Scratchy towels. Scratchy.
We go off the rails.
It's a new segment. It's
We're just
called
going to call
laundry.
ourselves off the rails.
The itchy and scratchy
How do you
towel.
do your laundry? Wow.
We're going to rename our podcast to Off the Rails because
Off the
that's
rails.
all we do
Yeah.
is go off the rails. There's a sound bite. Can we get a timestamp on that, Dave?
No.
Dave was just like, fuck it. Dave's gone.
The answer is no.
Dave's having a nap when we were talking about towels.
I'm just eating Skittles over here.
Well, you know, as long as you have your towel, as long as you know where your towel is, you're fine.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's the one thing you need.
Yeah.
Yep.
One thing I hope to say about me, that there is a fruit that knew where his towel was.
Yep, exactly.
What about you, Corey? How was your nothing?
Not a thing.
Come on.
I had a really bad, what I thought was a tooth infection, but I slept through it and it was fine the next day. So
Oh, perfect.
yeah,
Dodged a bullet.
So what arbitrary thing did you take before that?
I
So
did
you can tell
not
us.
actually. I took Advil because I was pretty sure that it was going to last me until I could get it pulled.
Oh, you must have prayed really hard.
You didn't have
I was going to make a joke about prayer, but
you didn't have a turmeric
Yeah.
latte or anything like that.
Did you maybe just suffer nerve death in that tooth?
It very well could be. Yeah, no, it could be some. Well, no, because if it was an infection, it would still be affecting the rest of my mouth, because those can be pretty severe. So it might have just been a nerve that was, I don't know, had something pressing against it or something. I'm still going to get the tooth pulled though.
Maybe that nerve was just lifting too much and
Yeah,
had a hernia.
Yeah.
that
Tried to
nerve had a
bench
hernia.
300. Yes.
While muting Gumby's mic.
Just speaking of prayers, did you see the little video, the ad for the Thoughts and Prayers app, like the joke video?
I did not.
No.
It is so good. It's basically just a short satire ad for a Thoughts and Prayers app where you can just like with the touch of a button send thoughts and prayers all across the world.
Perfect.
Instead of actually helping.
It's like
But-
likes.
Yeah. But it's like instead of donating money, just get the Thoughts and Prayers app with a simple touch of a button, you know.
Perfect.
And then you can choose what power or value of prayer it is, and you get charged X amount on your Google Play account.
Yeah. That would make it expensive though.
That's a great business idea, Gumby.
Yeah. Well, anything that screws stupid people out of money.
That does seem to be the name of the game lately.
Wait a minute, you sold me a car.
How's your car, Dave?
Yeah, that's right.
Come to think of it. No, just kidding.
it runs on thoughts and prayers.
Please don't break down, please. God, let me make it to work, please.
Yeah.
I think I may have a car like that.
Right on.
By the way, what do you think I could get for like a buyback value at Mazda for my car?
Of your Old Testament mobile?
My Old Testament mobile?
Oldsmobile, right? Is
No,
it?
no.
It's a Pontiac.
It's a Pontiac.
Oh, no. I don't know. $50.
$50. That's not bad.
Something. It's a quarter of a payment.
Slap in the back for still driving that thing.
Yeah.
A hug?
You might need it.
The hugs are free. The hugs are free.
Not at Mazda.
They charge you extra for that shit?
Yeah, look at your fine print.
Fuck that.
It's priced into the service.
I like how this segment of the show goes. You know, towels, teeth, and automobiles. Yeah.
Why not?
It's a good segment name. I like that.
All right, so let's cover a story here before we go to the music break. We've got a story from Quartz Media called "Women Are Flocking to Wellness Because Traditional Medicine Still Doesn't Take Them Seriously." So it came out on June 15th, and right around the inaugural summit of Gwyneth Paltrow's lifestyle brand Goop.
You should change your name
What
to...
the fuck, eh?
It should be changed to Plop.
It's just so dumb. Like, this is definitely a person who named their child Apple. Like, that's where we're at here.
And consciously uncoupled with that asshole from Coldplay. He might be a nice guy, I just really hate his music.
What's his name? Chris?
Yeah, Chris Martin.
Chris Martin.
Yeah.
That guy.
So the article kind of talks about, is this wellness crap a result of medicine, mainstream medicine, not really being supportive of women or not treating women's health seriously? So I don't know. Did you guys take a look at this?
I read it. Yeah. And I think it's got a point.
I didn't really take it seriously.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Kidding.
I did look at it just skimming through some of the stuff, but I think for certain instances it's probably true, but a lot of the bullshit that comes up is just way the fuck out there. It's not an issue that's not being treated. Like, we have perfectly good treatments for what you're looking for. But no, you don't need glitter in your vagina. You know, that that
glitter
kind of shit
goop.
where
you don't.
I don't know if that one's really a treatment.
Where we have treatment for this that works, but you still come up with some bullshit like organic non-GMO thing that is supposed to be better. But
yeah, there seem to be a few reasonable, like pretty good concerns. I thought like these are like they have fibromyalgia or some autoimmune stuff that women have more prevalent than men, and these things they don't really get treated by doctors very well. But I don't see how any of that justifies going to an acupuncturist per se. I mean, maybe that's just because I know acupuncture is bullshit, but I don't know.
I think one of the most compelling aspects of this debate is I was having a conversation with my cousin this past week, and she sees a naturopath.
Okay.
And the most compelling part for me, what I took from her talking about her experience was that the first appointment, she was there for 90 minutes. 90 minutes. Talking about herself, her issues.
Right.
That is exhaustive. That's like 9 appointments with a doctor.
For sure.
And as we know, because we're scientifically minded people sometimes, we know that the placebo effect is it's noticeable. It accounts for like 20% of 20-some% of effect. And just sheerly being listened to, feeling like you're being listened to, feeling like you're heard, feeling like your feelings are valid, and that you're not taking crazy pills because you have this weird pain in your side. That
you're not taking crazy pills, but here's some crazy pills.
Yeah.
Here's some St. John's wort. That's going to fix that right up.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to what you're saying there.
There's more time. Yes, you're paying them a fuckload of money, but there's more time that's being spent. Yes, you're taking weird ass supplements, but you're people are paying better attention to you.
Yeah. The argument against that here, especially if you're looking at Saskatchewan, yes, our appointments are 10 minutes. They're quick in and out with your doctor. In the States where you have private health care, where you have private insurance, you can say, hey, I need a 1 hour consult. I need a 40-minute consult, and you'll get it through your insurance, right? So it's all part of your booking your time with your doctor. Like my doctor in Saskatoon, I can say, hey, I need to discuss these things. It's going to take longer than a regular thing, and they'll give me 30 or 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It's but most of the time you book an appointment here, it's 10 minutes. Where with Woo, there's less people, so they'll take more time.
But I think it's not just about the time. Like when I've been to chiropractors like back when I was younger, but from what I remember, pretty much almost every single appointment that I've had with a real doctor, they're pretty dry. Like they don't try to sell you on why their treatment is good. It's like, yeah, this is what we do with that kind of problem. Here to prescribe this.
Yeah.
You don't really get kind of that snake oil salesman who like really
touchy-feely.
Yeah, like the touchy-feely charm guy, where with the natural doctors, or air quotes doctors, like the natural treatment, you get all that mumbo jumbo of the spiritual feeling of this and shit like that, which I think has probably
more of an emotional effect.
Yeah, like an emotional effect. Whereas like a lot of doctors can be pretty dry. Like they know, you have this. This is what we do for that. Here's a prescription.
Yeah.
This will and done. And you don't really like. That's why doctor's appointments normally kind of suck.
Yeah.
It's like
Well, and there's so many doctors, and they're all so overworked here that you're going to get shit doctors sometimes. If you have a serious problem.
Yeah, you're going to get a doctor who may not be shit, but who is tired and who is working a 13-hour
Or
day.
has seen 8 people with the same issue that you have, and they just go by rote, right?
Well, and knows that you can't do anything for irritable bowel syndrome. There, you have to, sometimes
just let it go.
Just let it go.
Right. So then
Where's
people
that mute
turn.
button again?
So people turn to the quack who says that they have a snake oil for it, and then you feel like you're getting more accomplished there. And you might just happen to be coming off of your IBS at the same time that you took this St. John's wort or fucking
some of the
turmeric.
Some of the things that they've got listed in this are legitimately issues that there's not a lot of study done on, or like they aren't definitive. Like the whole fibromyalgia thing, it's not really a helpful diagnosis at this point. It's essentially just pain in certain places, and they don't know what causes it, right? So then, and there's like things like chronic fatigue and like some of these other things that the woo practitioners, they pretend they know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's super comforting to people, is that, oh, well, they know that it's this chakra line. That
this chakra just needs, chakra totally needs some cupping. And
yeah,
it would be good.
That's right. So
just
then
cup the chakra.
Just eat some chocolate. Cacao.
Same
Cacao.
It lies with the sun. It's on the same wavelength.
But I mean, I think there's there's this weird. Great. Now you know what I got in my head?
Yeah.
Now I got fucking Dr. Roxo in my head. Cocaine! I do cocaine! But
That's why I think of David Avocado Wolf every time he says something.
But I mean, I think there's certain elements. I mean, I think they're not wrong saying that they're not taken seriously, but I think there's also a cultural element where, we raise, girls from, me more feeling and more touchy-feely than, say, boys.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of this appeals, right? Like, okay, go to the woo doctor, and, well, now you're in touch with your spiritual self and do this. And
your angel guide is going to make you feel
better.
Not just that. Women are encouraged to go to see the doctor when they have random pains. We're told to suck it up and just go back to work, right? That's just one example, right? Where something that they might not be able to diagnose goes untalked about.
I don't ever feel like I'm told to go to the doctor ever. Like I was brought up in a home where my mom completely and utterly ignored herself for the sake of her family,
right?
For the sake of her marriage and her kids, and she refused to go to the dentist. She'd rather go to a chiropractor than a medical doctor.
Yeah, well, that might be part of it too. Is where that's why here buy this fucking Himalayan salt lamp. You can plug this in and cure yourself at home rather than going to a doctor.
Yeah, I don't want to poo-poo on the argument of this article, it may very well be true that less effort is being spent on research for diseases that affect women primarily. That could very well be true, but I don't know. That shouldn't be based on which gender goes to alternative medicine sooner. Like, actually go back and look at how much is being invested in the research. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, there was a few issues with the article itself, right? Like, it didn't come out right and say that, hey, Reiki and acupuncture are bullshit. Like, even though people are going to this, it was almost supportive of these measures. Like you say, like, I think there's something to the argument that perhaps women are neglected in medicine.
Even in the closing, they just said healthcare practitioners don't needn't resort to crystals and mandalas to learn something from the wellness industry. So it's not condemning the wellness industry at all.
Which I personally, I think the wellness industry is one big scam, right?
Well, some of it I don't disagree with. And that's the stuff in the wellness industry that I'm cool with is the stuff that runs parallel to doctor stuff. So not Reiki and shit like that, but having like if you know nothing about dietary needs and you're getting cancer treatments and some people know that, you know, this type of chemotherapy reduces this complex vitamin in your system or whatever, right?
Right.
So that kind of stuff, the stuff that runs symbiotically with medicine, I don't have a problem with. Like, that stuff's fine. It's not harmful.
The problem is that it's unnecessary at best, and at worst, it's harmful.
Because how do you determine which ones run in line with the medical research? You ask the medical professional, you know, kind of
right.
Yeah. So at that point, it is just medicine. If it is in line with
yeah, well, it's supplemental care is what they call it, right?
I think it boils down to is like that's one thing the wellness industry, quote unquote, you know, sarcasm included,
right?
And all that,
sarcasm included.
Is that, you know, there used to be a thing called bedside manner, and you know, it used to be some doctors were good at it, others not so much. Now none of them are. You know, they just
I think,
you know,
and it there though, like, I don't ever remember. Or I think.
And you know what, I'm saying that as, you know, they might have had that in like the 60s is what I'm thinking for bedside manner. Whereas, you know, where they used to make house calls and shit, where now it's like you got to phone them.
Nobody makes house calls anymore.
No,
some people do. There are doctors that are breaking ground again and making only house calls.
Is that right?
It does happen. There's a really interesting show on CBC called White Coat Black Art, and the host of that show he talks about various and sundry things to dealing with the medical field, and it's fascinating. He talks a lot about there's a hospital that has a naturopathic clinic in it.
Okay.
And they talk about, you know, both sides of the argument, which is interesting. It's a very interesting debate. But yeah, he talks about house calls and things like that. It's definitely worth a listen.
I mean, I think that's where the good of this article is that they're saying is like, maybe the doctors do need to take some time and listen to them instead of just going, what's the problem? Well, take 2 of these and get the fuck out. Next. You know,
yeah, I think there needs to be a little bit more empathy. I think there's I preach that a lot in my life, and I think that it's true. I think we need to be more empathetic, and we need to meet people where they are. And
I mean, because that's just it. I mean, true. Ultimately, yeah. I mean, a lot of these are probably snake oil salesmen, and they just want to sell you more shit. Yeah. But they will sit there and listen to you, and you know, it's like. Right. Whereas, like you said, anytime I've gone to a doctor, I always feel like they just, well, what's your problem? Well, you don't have an axe sticking out of your fucking head. What are you bitching about? You know, take 2 of these, get the fuck out of here. You know, like.
And sometimes there are some physicians that are like, well, I'm going to get that fixed right up for you. Like, well, you're not providing, like, okay, ask how I'm doing and ask my symptoms. But there's some people that chronically go to the doctor because they have these issues, but it could be something completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, chronic pain is shitty at the best of times. I mean, it's one of the biggest issues that we have, and there's so little training in the medical field for that, and there's so many people, there's so few physicians that are trained to address chronic pain. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 in the province that deals with chronic pain for like 1 million people. So if you're going to get it referred, it takes like a year to get an appointment with somebody
whereas
like
like some of these wellness centers, they'll be they'll talk to you.
I can see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if these wellness centers could prescribe weed.
I don't know.
Because I might be more on board with them if they could prescribe weed.
Yeah. Well, this time next year, we're all going to be totally high.
I'm still going to take a pass.
Then I got high.
I don't want to smell like weed, but I'd eat some brownies or something.
Wascana Park is going to be lit.
Yeah.
No shit, eh?
Yes.
It's going to be a smoke cloud for the first couple of weeks.
Yeah. There's going to be, what's that? Is that smog? No. Somebody hotbox vagina.
I think
we'll all be high just because we're here.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
all
dear.
right. Let's go to a music break. To those listening live or to our patrons, this is where the outro goes. We'll be back in a few minutes. To everybody listening weekly, we'll see you next time. And this week's music break is kind of a mix. I got 2 that are a little more intense than the first one. The first one is Pure Comedy by Father John Misty. Stephanie shared it with me when he was on Saturday Night Live.
I love that guy.
And this song is pretty good. But then I got Close Your Eyes and Count to Fuck by Run the Jewels and Digging for Windows by Zach De La Roca because they've been in my head for the last fucking
love Zach
months. So we'll go to music break. All right, let's finish this off. We got no new listener feedback via email, but there are a number of ways to get in touch with us. Follow us on Facebook.
Please like us
at facebook.com/brainstorm podcast.
Tell your friends.
Review us
We're
on
actually
iTunes.
910 likes on our Facebook page.
If we get to 1,000, Corey will give you a back rub.
With a knife.
Fair. That's fair. If you want it.
If you're within driving distance.
Yeah. I don't know if he's qualified, but
but I'll totally give you a knife.
He does have hands and knives.
Yeah, that's right.
But he did admit they're not balanced.
That's true. This one weighs more than
he has some positive energy.
I would like to give certain people massages with knives, with throwing knives from a distance.
With the tip.
From a distance.
Kind of like giving someone a high five in the face.
With a chair.
Okay. Yeah, so follow us on Twitter at BrainstormPod, please. Or you can join our cool Facebook or discussion group.
It's awesome.
It's awesome. We have people in it who
aren't
post
just us.
Discuss things.
Well, I think mostly it's just been posting goofy shit.
So far, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Which is fun.
It's good to
Or
keep abreast.
email us at mail@brainstormblog.net. If you want to stay anonymous, then let me know in the email, or you can message me on Facebook. I almost never remember to read Facebook messages on the air, and I actually do get the odd one. But
don't forget to download our app.
Yes, that's right. Good call, Gumby. Download our app.
Do you even have that written there?
No, I don't. I never remember it. I have
There's
it downloaded.
an app?
Yeah, there's a Brainstorm Podcast app.
Where the hell you been?
Clear. I know it.
We have no new
thought it was
patrons this
here.
break. But remember, starting in August, we will be charging every week for the episodes as they come out. So everyone will have access to the same episodes as they get now. But I'll be uploading the regular episodes each week to Patreon, and that's what patrons will get charged for.
Oh, I got to drop my subscription.
So if you're currently being charged twice a month, you'll probably be charged 4 or 5 times a month. Which means you can set up for lower level patrons that may not change anything, but for higher level patrons, you can go in and set your donation settings so that there's a monthly limit. We don't want to break anybody. We're just trying to milk a little bit more.
And lower level and higher level patrons, it's like Scientology. The more you spend, the more respected you are, and the further you will get.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Higher up the bridge.
That's
Higher
right.
up the bridge.
Yep.
We're only maybe 6 weeks away from our interview with our $10 patron.
Ooh.
He gets to come on the show. So.
Oh.
So
if I increase my patronage,
Moses.
you can
I
be
leave
on
the show?
Yes.
Okay. So I can pay to not be here.
You can pay to not be here.
All of you listening can pay to not be here.
That's right. Any
Yeah.
amount you want to just not be here.
That is
Trust
generous.
me, that's better than being here.
Being a $10 patron lets you come on the show. Being a $20 patron lets you not be on the
Lets
show.
you avoid it. Our Patreon page is patreon.com/brainstormpodcast. We have a number of iTunes reviews this time that apparently have been there for a while because somehow they weren't showing up before.
In other words, Corey didn't check.
No, I checked every 2 weeks, I promise. From the Canadian store, we have a new review by user Krieger Shanghaisunbright, which I think they just did that so that it would be tough to pronounce.
That's awesome. That's a fantastic name.
5-star review. Was introduced to your show through a cross promotion on Life, the Universe, and Everything Else.
Awesome.
The Manitoba Show. And have been enjoying the last few episodes. I'd love hearing skeptical voices coming out of the Western Canadian provinces. Keep it up. Thanks very much for the review.
Yes, thank you.
We missed a couple from the U.S. store. One from back in February from TDTF Pod, where he gave us 5 stars and said, I look forward to hearing more of this in the future. And we will be having him on October 13th.
Oh.
That's Jonathan.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that, or check out his podcast. It's a lot of fun. It's short episodes that are really like thoughtful. He does like 7-minute podcasts.
TDTF.
That's cool.
And another one from Sharon F. back in May, where she gave us 5 stars and said, Sharon here from the Habeas Humor podcast. I just listened to the Pregnancy Woo episode and enjoyed it. I look forward to hearing more.
Which one was that?
We had
Karen.
Amy Tutor.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good
That was
show.
good. I enjoyed that one.
So check out Habeas Humor. Well, I'll reach out to Sharon and get a promo so we can play that during our breaks.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for the great reviews and ratings. Sorry I didn't see them sooner. Looks like the podcast Connect on the web browser doesn't seem to show everything. So, or maybe they just don't pop up right away. I don't know. Remember, if you give us a rating and write a review, then it really helps out the show, and we'll read it on the air. Just remember to shoot us an email at mail@brainstormblog.net to let us know which store to look in. Plug your stuff. Anybody got a stuff?
Stuffless.
Stuffless?
I'm stuffless.
I never do stuff.
You don't do stuff. Well, I'm still working on the next episode of the Hardcore Skeptic Examines. I have 3 that I'm working on, but one of them I have to wait for responses from the interviewee. One of them I have to wait for it to be approved by the interviewee. And the third one is just something I have to start, get finished.
Are we caught up on bonus content?
We are not.
Yeah.
But I do have a new YouTube video out.
Sweet.
Called There Is No Authoritarian Left. And you can find that on my personal YouTube account, which is just under my name, Corey Johnson. I think that's everything. Let's hit that outro music. You can check out the show notes at thebrainstormpodcast.com and our website, brainstormblog.net, eventually. Thanks to our financial supporters, Will, Lisa, Rob, Aaron, Nathan, Daryl, Marissa, Stephanie, Positively Skeptical, Michael, and Lachlan. You can join us live every second week when we broadcast live on Spreaker. You can find us at Spreaker.com/user/brainstormpodcast. Our next guest is Gleb Sapersky, founder of the Pro-Truth Movement.
That's going to be a fun fun.
That should be interesting. I've heard him on a few other shows.
Oh yeah, and I've chatted with him a few times. He's got a wicked sense of humor.
Yeah, good. Thanks to David Madison for joining us. You can find his book on Amazon, and I'll put a link in the show notes. And I think he mentioned his website was 10toughtruths.com or something.
Yeah, either TEN or the number 10.
Perfect. Thank you, Will D, for committing your time to working on the show notes.
Sweet.
Thanks to Dave for our intro music. Thanks to Alex Kemper Murdoch for doing the voiceover for the intro and for some of our ads. And thanks to Jason Kemal for our outro music. You can find his stuff at aloststateofmind.com. All music played is with permission or under the SOCAN license to play. For more information on SOCAN, you can check out our music license info page on our website, brainstormblog.net. I think that's everything. So give us a rating, give us a thumbs up, or give us a fave on your podcatcher of choice. Share the show with your friends and spread the word. Thanks.
Free knife massage.
Yeah, that's right. Free knife massage. Thanks for listening. And remember, the truth matters.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast with the possible exception of Corey, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.
We just wanted to say thanks to everyone who listens to us, shares the show, gives us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or supports us through Patreon and Gumroad. We don't have a lot of interaction sometimes with our listeners, but what we have had proves that we attract some of the best people around. Smart, kind, and cool. An audience truly worthy of the titles hardcore and woo-free. Thanks for helping us make the world a smarter place.